I don't want to characterize it in the wrong way, and there's a lot of different definitions, but I think existentialists ultimately do think that there's meaning in sort of pursuing the passion of life, like pursuing like in living life. That's where you discover the meaning at that individual level of fully embracing life. And I think sort of nihilism is again, it's kind of like a spectrum, but nihilism basically says there's no meaning and it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. I don't even know, but somehow that lands you in a place that's totally uninspired. Maybe nihilists would disagree with that. Maybe there's a way to live a creative life in a nihilistic mindset. And I think absurdism is somewhere in the middle, where pursuing meaning at all is not a good idea. So kind of, I think existentialists say you should be looking for meaning, and it's to be discovered in your own actions, in your own life, in the moment. And absurdism says life is absurd, nothing makes sense. Don't look for the meaning, just live, just be. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of the later Camus kind of philosophy. I don't know if you can sort of comment on these kind of nuanced ideas here. If there is no religious guide to your life, what do you think about this kind of search for meaning? Do you see that there's some wisdom in the existentialist perspective of discovering it in your own life, in this passion, in this kind of day-to-day existence, in the moments of your life that bring you joy, that kind of thing?
You're bringing different sort of perspectives and trying to tease apart, like, well, wait, what are the differences in those perspectives, right? And I think what it points out is that, okay, we tend to conflate things as human beings, right? And to take two different things and try and make them into one. But we also, I think, on the other end of the spectrum, get very overly reductionist. Mm-hmm. And I think that when we get too overly reductionist, we lose the ability to learn from anything or to generate meaning, right? I mean, think about Sartre, who is, the thought of existentialism is so consistent with him, right? Who, on the one hand, wrote about, very clear terms, like this is what it is and this is what it isn't. And here's how you're going to make your meaning in a very like academically proscribed way. But he also wrote short stories like The Wall, right? Where there's something totally absurd happens, right? As part of the story, right? So I think what ends up happening is people either reduce themselves or get associated with something that by being overly reductionist takes us away from meaning, right? The idea that, look, we don't know if there is an overarching religious meaning or, what we call a religious meaning or purpose. Like, we don't know that, right? So, okay, if we take that as a given, that people who say that they know are having faith, like how Spinoza described faith, right? Faith is that you don't know, but you believe anyway. Right? It's not because you have faith now you know something, right? Because I think that's a slippery slope to the persecution of others, right? So if we say, okay, we don't know, then we're left either deciding, okay, well then to hell with everything. Like there's that movie, Strange Brew, right? Bob and Doug McKenzie, where like the brakes don't work on the car and one of them says, oh, why bother steering, right? So if we don't know that there's meaning, like why bother steering? Let's just give up the ghost, right? And I don't think that's even what the nihilists said. I mean, I think Bakunin said we should get rid of everything that we've ever created except Beethoven's Ninth Symphony and start over from there. But so even people who are very nihilistic or associated with that, a lot of them were just not liking what we had built, right? So if we accept that a lot of what we have built as humans inside of us and outside of us is really counterproductive and doesn't help us, and that absurd things happen in the world, right? And that often the way social structures and systems build themselves up is absurd. Like I think our healthcare system operates in a way that's absurd. Right? So if we accept that there are absurdities that we don't know if there's truth, then what are we left with? But like, well, let's try and make meaning, right? Ortega y Gasset said, "Yo soy yo e mi circunstancia," right? I'm myself and my circumstances, right? Which is like, look, we can't control everything. We live in circumstances around us, but within those circumstances, we can make decisions and define ourselves. And I think the brilliance of that, and I think tying it all together, right, in a way that's not trying to be, in a sense, it ties it all together by not trying to answer everything concisely. That yes, we can make meaning. Like we see that if someone trips in front of me, I could walk around them or I could help them up. I mean, no one can tell me that it doesn't matter what I do. I absolutely reject the idea that, oh, I could step over them or on them, or I could help them up and it doesn't matter. Oh yeah, try being the person on the ground, right? So we create meaning, but we live in our circumstances, and there are absurdities both within us and outside of us in our social structures. And there are a lot of things that pretend to have meaning that don't. And there's the shades of nihilism. But ultimately, there's something going on here that's doing the best we can in the context of just not knowing.
Yeah, I tend to see, I don't know if it's genetic. I tend to think, just observing the internet, the number of memes there are, I think many other people are like me. I tend to see the humor in the absurdity. I tend to enjoy it from that kind of angle. I see the Kafkaesque nature of society, of different aspects of society, and just kind of notice the magic with a smile.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just laugh at the circus of it all. Because it is magical that the circus all comes together. Right. It's like a little bit out of sync, and then there's a guy playing trombone, but like overall, it's pretty good. Right. It's pretty good.
Right. And we can look at that and just kind of marvel and go,
yeah,
huh, right? Which I think is a relation to at least a lot of what we in the Western world think of as Eastern, right? It's like as non-attachment, right? Because then if there's something absurd and it's like not good for me, right? Then I accept that too, instead of getting angry about it and railing about it or seeing some cosmic meaning in it, right? I think there's also a healthy non-attachment in what you're saying too.